There are a few things that we all have in common: life, death, and the planet that we call home. Everything from conception to death is started and finished here.
Is a man, woman, and child who walk not in the concept and godliness, standing in the path of sinners, nor sit and see those scornful. When the lights will be on the Lord, the most I case Selassie. Case Selassie. Pagans are wishing bad things for me.
The problems that we face in this country no longer have borders. It is worldwide. If you look at the economic crisis, it's not just the United States of America. It has nothing to do with a new president that's come into office or the old administration. This is something that's been developing and going on 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's the worst we've ever seen. There is no divide when it comes to the needs of the people, the needs of humanity, and the issues that we're facing today.
2 years ago were okay, they were normal, and they just end up on the streets because there's no income, there's no money, there's nothing to uphold their lives.
My day, there weren't as much as this, but we had everything needed to sustain the human life. The system doesn't put themselves in the circumstances of the homeless. There are many buildings that are shut. Plywood is on it, and yet we have a homeless brother or homeless sister. And I ask myself the question, why should this be in a modernized world? It's a tragedy, and it is senseless that they're looking at the bureaucracy of the system and not the life that is upon the planet Earth, as they are.
It's well known that your social situation and social determinants impact health in many, many ways. People who have suffered from poverty or unemployment or homelessness are subject to a wide variety of illnesses, severe mental stress, infectious diseases, malnutrition, violence, and these things tend to trigger each other into a spiral of downward poor health. When you encounter somebody who is down and out, who may be homeless on the street or may be moving from one situation to another, may be suffering from a variety of chronic illnesses, it's very hard to get to the roots of the problem because of the way that the situations feed on each other. Until some care is given, until some chronic support is given, you can't sort out often how much is physical illness, how much is mental illness, and how much is social instability.
When I had nowhere to live, I was in the library. I used to go to, we traveled around the country. We were homeless for many years, and I used to join these reading contests and win. Whole neighborhood, whole county. I was a learner. I was one who took instruction like any kid that would be troubled, a lot of emotional issues and a lot of serious issues. Where are you gonna sleep? I would hear my parents saying stuff like, when the food was getting thin, I would hear when they were wondering where we would sleep the next day or when the money for the hotel would run out. And as a child, I would hear it, but I never really heard it like a boogeyman or a monster. It was never fear, it was never shame. It was like a forecast of a storm coming for a child. The day I came home and the doors were locked in my own home, the home I was born into, and seeing my furniture and toys and my mother and my grandmother whispering, knowing something was wrong. I think I had fear for maybe a couple of seconds. The first thing is, will we ever be able to put these things back inside that house? And I knew we had nowhere to carry the things that were on that street. within seconds knowing that there's no Christmas toys or these are hand-me-down clothes, that I might go to school and I'm wearing somebody else's clothes. Torture just made me stronger. I remember when it got really bad, I would watch my mother and my grandmother struggle to put food together just for us, and I knew every time I ate, they wouldn't eat at night. And it's something I'll never forget, and it happened more times than I could ever remember. The courage that they had, they didn't give me the answers, because I couldn't understand them anyway, but I saw the courage, I saw the love, I saw the honor and the respect, and I just followed the path. And from riding the waves of misfortune and tough times, it made me a soldier. And I learned how to ride those waves, and I disciplined myself as a child not to let my parents know when I was terribly hungry, not to let them know when I was terribly burdened. I remember one time my grandmother asked if I was hungry. She knew I went to bed hungry, and it broke her heart. And I knew to never let them know when I was hungry.
It's easy for those of us who are currently healthy and currently mentally well off and not suffering from addictions to think that it can't happen to us. It won't happen to our loved ones. But then when it does happen to us, we seem surprised. It's a much healthier and realistic point of view to see those who are suffering and realize that they're part of us, and that by alleviating their suffering, we're actually helping ourselves in the future, ourselves in the past, and ourselves and our relatives and friends. Because truly, these are issues and problems that we all face. One example of social situations in health relate to how our society defines problems such as drug abuse or alcoholism or mental illness. These things, from a public health point of view, are almost always considered to be health problems, public health problems. And when we define them as public health problems, we think of solutions, which we begin with health solutions, rehabilitation, health services, mental health services, alcoholism treatment services. If you define them as social problems, then you end up stigmatizing and locking up people instead. The problem we have in coming to grips with the definition of the problem leads us with a group of people who are stigmatized and often marginalized in society. And part of that marginalization leads to increased homelessness and increased inability to be accepted in society and get the services they need.
Be so heavy, but that's okay though. I know what to do, so I'll be alright, but I'm gonna fight.
When you're homeless, the things that we think about, meaning like people like who have the privilege to not be homeless, who have the shelter, who have the home, the key to the home. We worry about curses or misfortunes, you know, and that's real.
When I see homeless children, I don't see them there in their state. I see them being retired. I see them being elderly. I see them living a full life. Because if I saw them where they were there, I couldn't go on another day. So I try to see in them the magic, the possibility, the purpose, the unfulfilled, and think that I'm providing something that's going to take them to where they go. People say, like, the statistics show that homeless children really don't do well, and homeless families don't do well. You know, not being intelligent enough to learn and develop and be a positive contributor to society. And I was in that segment of my life, whether it was me having to steal out of a supermarket to eat for the night, whether it was me jumping a turnstile, whether it was me being rambunctious and not being able to work in conventional settings. You know, kids become rowdy and exciting, and I mean, all of those are phases of that statistical data that goes into it.
In Hong Kong here with Cami Rice. Hi, Cami.
Hi, Craig.
You're the Vice Chairman for Usher's New Look Foundation. Are we talking about Usher the performer here?
Yes, we are. The story is an interesting one because it's actually a story that started off with a tragedy but ended up triumph. And interesting enough, May 5th, 2009, I was held at gunpoint for over 2 hours. My bedroom door opened, a laser light shined in, they shut the door. 2 seconds later, they're over the bed, gun to my head, telling me to get up, shut up, or I'd be raped and killed. Honestly, it was life-changing. I mean, I thought it was over. I thought, this is it, this is the end. Interesting enough, the guys were caught, and they were 19 and 20 years old, the same age as my sons.
Why aren't you bitter after an experience like that? Why don't you take the approach of a victim?
I think it was the courtroom experience because what was so insightful to me is the devastation and the impact on so many people, not just me, the victim. To watch these boys, and they're boys, they're 19 and 20 years old, okay? Their mothers, their grandmothers, their cousins, their brothers and sisters. There were rows of family in this courtroom. And to watch the pure devastation of the families. And after I testified, they had a short break while the judge went into the chamber, and I went to the ladies' room, and one of the mothers was standing there, and she was sobbing, and she grabbed my arm, and one of the boys' younger sisters was next to her, and she's crying. And they just heard me testify of what all went down and the specifics of what her son had done. And she's sobbing, and she grabs me by the arm, and she said, "Please understand, he was a good boy. He got in the wrong crowd, he made the wrong choices, and I just need you in your heart to please just forgive my son." Now, you know, it's hard for me to even talk about to this day because as a mother, I'm not the only person that was hurt here. Everyone was hurt in that courtroom. And to see these boys, they got 20 years in prison, no parole, there will be no rehabilitation, and their lives are over, right? They're gonna come out when they're 40 years old. You know, so yeah, do they deserve to be punished? Yes, yes, absolutely. But to see the devastation it went across the board was an aha moment. There's no reason to be a victim. I knew that I had to do something, it's time to get to the core root of what's going on.
So you realised then that there was a deeper problem and you wanted to understand it better, but how did that lead you to becoming involved with the foundation and actually getting involved with youth who have these problems?
Here's the irony and the meant to be, you know, you look at every bad, horrible thing that happens to you and there's always a good something out of it, right? So it's 3 weeks maybe after the courtroom experience. Not getting out a lot, still, you know, pretty shaken up. And Usher had met my husband at a previous event and invited my husband to this event, and my husband was out of town, and he said, you know, you really need to do this, pushing me that I needed to get out. And he wasn't really sure exactly what Usher was doing either. So I forced myself, put on a suit, I'm going out. So I go down, and I sit in this room, and it was unbelievable. I'm sitting down, and from me to you stands a young man, and he's tattooed and, you know, rough a little bit around the edges, and so my heart's beating fast anyway, right? Because I'm still not used to even being around people at this point. And he said, you know, I lived a life of violence. I was in a gang, guns, drugs, and I am standing here in front of you today because of Usher and because of this foundation. I am now enrolled in college. I care. But the problem was I didn't know there was a way out. I had no idea. My brothers, my cousins, I did what everyone was doing in my community. And so at that point, when he said he didn't know a way out, again, tears just started coming to my face. I was like, you know what? I'm supposed to do this. This is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to help youth so that they understand there are choices and that there is a way out. And if you look in the United States, 75% of boys that their fathers are incarcerated, 75% of them go to prison as well. So there's a problem, and I wanted to get involved.
You know that I know that this can go on.
There are many vivid memories of my painstaking life as a child, dealing with homelessness, the way my mother suffered, the way my family suffered, but I've taken them as colors of pain and strokes on a brush to make it an abstract me. From my mother having a violent nervous breakdown in front of my face, and me having to be a man immediately at 8 years old, straight man, straight to work. And I would go after every single thing. Like if I failed, I'd be setting my family back. Because I realized when I got to about 11, all my family had was me. I was the next one to break the slavery, the chain of poverty. One of the most vivid memories of me becoming homeless at such a young age was not just losing everything and leaving everything. I think it was the battle to not let authorities, policemen, social workers, and caretakers who would come in to help families in need to defy, to deflect, and to escape them from taking me from my family because they thought I was in a tough condition. At one time they put me in a foster home. A couple of days, my grandmother came and got me, and I learned how to deflect that. I was better with my family next to the garbage than I would have been in that institution. And I got to see it like looking a dragon in the face. And that was vivid, and that's when it showed me this is real.
Growing up in foster care at 2 months old, I became a victim to the system. My mother was a crack cocaine user and abuser. Day one was the goal was adoption, and we never got adopted, and the system gave us such a hard time. And I remember the doctors, and I was reading the reports just not too long ago, and it showed mild cerebral palsy, mental retardation. Tremendous mentally retarded. He will never be able to walk. He'll never be able to be articulate. The doctors ripped me off. They wanted to give me medication. They diagnosed me with quadriplegia. They said you'll never be able to walk. You'll never be able to function. You're retarded. And teachers told me I'll never make it. And they diagnosed me with ADHD. And they said you ain't never gonna make it. You ain't never gonna be successful. And so I went through that. And then about 12 years old, I was sexually molested by a family friend, and I was already going through changes. And then when I was 16 years old, I was drugged and raped by my former teacher, who was a New York City Board of Education teacher, and it just, my life just turned upside down. That was around the same time in which my grandmother became a paranoid schizophrenic. It was just so much going on, and I realized that so many children have been afflicted. And
what kept you on a clean slate to stay away from selling drugs or robbing people and stuff like that? Because when you have nothing, you do anything.
I realized one thing, and I told the commissioner yesterday, it is not about me. It is about any other child who's broken that I can reach out to. I will save more lives telling my story and what I've gone through, that I can survive, and I can stand here and say that there is a God. And that I love you if nobody loves you, and I care for you if nobody cares for you. And that, to me, telling my story impacts so many children, because they say, how can you survive it? When the nights when I cried myself to sleep and I held myself to sleep and I didn't know, I was losing my mind and I was about to commit suicide. And so I said, you know what? I will affect more people by telling my story. Children are walking around and they're depending on a false hope.
So you're saying the segment of people that we're fixing in the street, the elderly people we've been really good at, these children are real, the homelessness growth is moving a great deal. So do we need to concentrate on more clothes for children? Do we need to try to get into some of these shelters and speak to these kids? What is the best way to get this segment?
Well, one thing I do think is that, speaking to them and having people understand, children understand, because they're still children, they're considered subject child when you're in the system, understanding that there are people that do care. One thing that I've looked at is love. People don't have love, and so you'll never understand. You know, they're walking around broken, dressing up their hurt, dressing up their broken.
But let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Because this is why I got a lot of respect for you, Jamel. I'm trying to figure out how'd you keep a clean slate.
It is not about me. It is about any other child who's broken that I can reach out to. I will save more lives telling my story and what I've gone through that I can survive, and I can stand here and say that there is a God. And that I love you if nobody loves you, and I care for you if nobody cares for you. And that, to me, telling my story impacts so many children, because they say, how can you survive it? When the nights when I cried myself to sleep and I held myself to sleep and I didn't know, I was losing my mind and I was about to commit suicide. And so I said, you know what? I will affect more people by telling my story, because if they know that I've gone through it, I've been through incarceration, you can't tell me one thing that I haven't done. And that's why. And so there's a balance, and my balance was, I didn't go to the movies, I didn't party. My balance was write my story and sing how I can get out. And now I have done that. I've written a testimony. Not to demean, denounce, or degrade any agency or its reputation, but to say I don't want to see another child failed. And I'm sending it to every supervising judge of the family court system. I'm sending it to the New York State Chief Judge, Judith K. I'm sending it to every elected official, whether it be government, I don't care, government, city, and state elected official, every service provider, every foster care agency, every ACS, every child welfare system, citywide. I don't care if I have to go to send it to their house. I don't care if I meetings. I didn't get my GED, but let me tell you something. I roll around the best of the best of the people. And you know what? I don't look at race. I look at the heart. There's too many people broken. And you know how many people cried? When I testified before the city council, people was in tears. They didn't know what to do. They said, well, we don't know what to do. We don't know where to start. Did you ever feel like you was loved? And I said, no, because foster parents don't get paid to love children, and most times they don't. They get paid to warehouse them. Keep it in perspective. Come on. Keep it real. You're buying cars with my money. Oh, come on, they're living large off me. You know, oh, he's a special needs child. Oh, he has this. But you know what? I realized this. So many children are growing up and they don't got clothes, and they don't got clothes. They aging out of foster care. They don't got no high school diploma. They don't got no GED, and they're still going homeless day after day. I was in a meeting and 3 children called Children's Aid Society, broke down in tears and said, I'm homeless and I don't know where to turn. I don't know what to do. I'm lost now. And so all I can do is cry, because I slept on the subways. I knew what it was. Oh, come on, not to have nothing to eat. And I knew doctors and I knew lawyers and I had good friends, but I was too ashamed to tell about what I've gone through. Something has to change. Something has to change.
So many kids that become homeless, they join gangs, getting involved with stuff they shouldn't mess with. Oh, and people died out there too. You hear about it, but they don't want to tell nobody. It's either gang related or people just are on drugs and they need their fix, so they go around killing people at night.
My name is Pamela Francis, and I am a resident of New Orleans, Louisiana.
Hurricane Katrina Katrina, a Category 5 with winds of 165 miles per hour.
They're just trying to save their lives.
The devastation there is colossal.
They have clearly lost everything, and I am told what I am looking at is not the worst of it.
You have more homeless people now than you had from Katrina.
There was a big increase when, especially with Hurricane Katrina. Homelessness is growing in these difficult economic times, and it's affecting a wide variety of people. A lot more families we see and asking for help. So I think it's definitely becoming a big issue these days.
The homeless problem is terrible. If I see a homeless person, they say, give me a dime, a dollar, I'm going to give it to them. I'm not going to turn them down because I know what them people going through. People want to come back. They still have a lot of people not here. People want to come home. This is home. I was in Lafayette, and every day I prayed to come back home. This is my home. I don't want to die nowhere else. I want to die here, New Orleans. And I feel like this, city should be better. If you could take money to pick up the French quarters, you could help people get their houses together, and you could help the homeless people. And that's our main problem here, homeless people.
I'm drowning inside your love. You're all that I think of. But it's time for a change, babe. And that might seem strange to you. I've got to move on. And I think that you should know. I should know.
This is my city, and New Orleans will be back.
I'm tired of suffering. I can't endure the pain.
Many used to view those in need as lazy, drunks, or just trying to scam others. But with the strains of a global economic collapse, displacement has been running rampant and affecting those people who never thought it would. One U.S. city that has had its share of well-documented ups and downs is Detroit, Michigan. Once considered to be one of the most booming cities in the country, birthing the automotive revolution as well as a musical empire.
The long-anticipated municipal bankruptcy of Detroit is now official.
In some neighborhoods of Detroit, it looks like a hurricane has recently swept through, destroying nearly everything in its path.
The city, once the jewel of American industry, is now $18.5 billion in debt, with little prospect of actually paying that money back.
Residents, workers, and bondholders face the prospect of coping with the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history.
Detroit's kind of like it's like a ruin, you know? I really feel like it's post-apocalyptic, you know? Like, you know, absolutely. Like, the revolution is already happening, like, you know, nuclear winter, like, we're living in it. It's really disturbing to me, you know, as an American. Not just as a person, but, you know, it's quite disturbing. Like, I guess the only word I can, like, use for it is, like, hopeless, like, you know?
From the time I was born here, it was a pretty good time in the city, you know. Economics were pretty good. The city wasn't going down the toilet quite just yet, but downtown Detroit is like the homeless capital. Anywhere you go, you see people laying inside of a building or something. Stuff is getting real bad. Brothers can't find jobs out here. People are dying in the street off stupid stuff. I mean, and I never graduated high school, and I'm paying the price for it right now. I'm trying to make my own business. I'm trying to get my GED right now. And things have gotten to a point where it's almost hopeless, but we still have the select few people that still have hope in the city, that still wants to see the city show promise. I'm one of those people. I will never ever leave Detroit. I don't care how bad it gets here. I love this city. I love this state. It's just bad out here, but we have to stay here. We have to stay here until it gets better. We have to put in the effort to make it to get better. People have to start being honest around here. There's a whole lot of corruption in this city. We have to make this get better. We're not here to make the world worse. We're here to make the world get better. You can't give up on the city. You can't give up on something that birthed us, that made us. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I mean, you have to stand up for the city. You have to stand up for what's right. My name is Russell Cook, and I am the future of Detroit.
Silva, moradora do bairro Nova Sussuarana, faço parte do grupo Mídia Periférica. É uma das maiores causas que me incomoda muito dentro do meu bairro. Desde pequena, desde quando eu me entendo por gente, não existe um módulo policial dentro da minha comunidade. E o que é que acontece? Mas tem jovens de bem também dentro da comunidade e eles não enxergam isso, eles não veem isso, eles simplesmente chegam aterrorizando. Outra coisa também que me incomoda muito dentro da minha comunidade, o posto de saúde. Às vezes você vai lá no posto de saúde, não tem injeção, não tem um remédio, não tem um médico, não tem um pediatra, não tem um clínico, não tem uma base de posto 24 horas e a única base que está funcionando de forma de jeito nenhum. Aqui dentro também, em Sussuarana, acontece em 6 meses falta água, é incrível. E quando manda, depende, 1 mês, 2 meses, aí eles pegam e mandam o carro-pipa para tapiar. E aí a gente tem que ficar 6 meses carregando água naquela luta, descendo lá embaixo, vendo se alguém ainda está disposto a emprestar alguns baldes de água, porque paga, a Embasa todo mês está ali com sua conta, mesmo faltando água, a Embasa todo mês manda a conta. Que dentro também é uma educação horrível. Se você entrar em uma sala de aula, você vai ver que não tem professores para todas as matérias, os horários ficam vagos, não tem uma quadra de esporte, não tem uma movimentação, na realidade é essa, social com os jovens, não tem aula porque a violência está muito grande na comunidade. E eu e os jovens daqui de dentro, eu e H.A.N.D, que faz parte do grupo Mídia Periférica, a gente sempre está tentando mudar isso, sempre está tentando levar o que é realmente que está acontecendo pelo meio da comunicação, fazendo reuniões com autoridade, procurando saber o que está acontecendo com a comunidade, com os pessoais mesmo, os moradores daqui de dentro do bairro.
Então, tem infraestrutura, problemas em questão à acessibilidade do jovem no mercado de trabalho, por questões de preconceito, tanto racial como geográfico, porque se você mora numa comunidade, muitas vezes é difícil você ingressar no mercado de trabalho, até por isso também é acarretado pelo sensacionalismo que a mídia prega em cima dessas comunidades de periferia. Então, para além, tem também problemas de infraestrutura, como falta de saneamento básico, falta de assistência pela parte do governo. Muitas vezes tem comunidades, como aqui na Sussuarana, que a gente ficou já 6 meses sem água. A falta do governo injetar ações diretas naquelas comunidades, que por muitas vezes abre a brecha para que o assistencialismo entre. Tipo, na comunidade vão se construir vários empreendimentos, então aquelas empreiteiras, aquelas empresas levam pequenos custos à comunidade que não vai amenizar o efeito que eles estão causando naquela comunidade, eles estão trazendo mais pessoas para aquela comunidade, eles estão trazendo muito mais coisas, vão inchar nossas tubulações, nossos sistemas de esgoto, de água, de iluminação, e pequenos custos não vão resolver. Então eu acredito muito em fortalecer o empreendedorismo dos jovens nas comunidades, fortalecer a visão política desses jovens e da própria comunidade, e ponderar o que já acontece dentro daquelas comunidades. Dentro da comunidade tem vários grupos. De você ir para aquela comunidade e criar um choque, você poderia fortalecer esses grupos que já existem e potencializar para que eles, com maiores mecanismos, conseguissem chegar o máximo perto do foco, que é a mudança, e que o controle social se faça presente na vida de cada um morador, e não só de cada vez mais as comunidades tenham voz própria, produzida por pessoas que vêm de dentro da comunidade, que sabem da veracidade dos fatos que acontecem dentro da comunidade.
I founded Cambodian Children's Fund in 2004. Prior to that, I worked in Hollywood. I was a studio executive. I took a mini sabbatical after leaving 20th Century Fox and went through Asia. I was taken to the municipal garbage dump, Sting Ninh Che. That's the area of greatest poverty in Cambodia. You know, it's not until you see children who are 3, 4 years old who are required to work picking garbage, scavenging, in order to survive. The first thing you want to do is you want to help the children right there, right then, and that was getting them off the garbage dump and into a safe place. I'd always held the classic prejudices against aid, particularly international aid, that you didn't know where your money was going. You also have a feeling like it's not your problem because it's so far away, it's so removed from my existence living in West Los Angeles that it's not my problem. But when you're standing on that garbage dump and there's nothing to separate you from these children and there's no plan B for these children, they are our responsibility. All children are. It's a collective responsibility. There wasn't a grand vision as such. It was very much an immediate reaction. Get these kids into a safe place where there was no risk of being physically or sexually abused. It was getting them into an education, making sure they were fed, and things would build organically around that. When you build a program, you want it to be sustainable, and you also want it to have the capacity to build so it can help a larger number of children and over a longer period of time. One of the most dire aspects of poverty, and when families and people are living in dire poverty, is that your decision making is based on getting food on the table that day or that night, and that blocks out any other needs, any other decision making. It's all about getting food on the table, and it leads to some harsh decisions, leads to domestic violence. There's an inability for a child to commit to an education, an inability for family planning. There are so many aspects that go around the fact that you're living day to day. And I never again want to have to hold a child that's dying of malnutrition. If I wasn't here and you didn't understand the issues of the core issues of poverty, and it's not just about money, it's about having a level of understanding. You can really only be effective at the point that you understand the core issues. I firmly believe that the only way to solve poverty is via community engagement. All these measures, which are phenomenally successful, but the reason they're that way is because of associated programs. It's so grounded in community, and if you took any single program away, whether it sounds removed from education or otherwise, a little piece of the education program would fall away. So even the programs don't obviously look like they're connected, they really are. We help parents refinance bad debts, which are currently running at 10% per month. Once they have those financial burdens under control and there's a plan, then the children don't have to work. They don't have to work so much, and they can come to school. You don't want to bring a child into education unless you know that you can see them all the way through the education. Each time we put in a social program, it increases the success in the education program. And alternatively, as the education program is more successful, we're seeing improvements in the community. Now, when you replicate at a community level, the advantages are that you're not putting in a structure that allows people to become dependent, and that allows an exit plan. So we're not ingrained in the community that when we move out, it collapses again. Given hope, given respect, and not through handouts, but hand-ups, allowing them, whether it's a microloan, allowing them to work their way out of debt, give them hope, respect, opportunity, then the family starts to change. It's looking at the core issues, seeing why they happen, and allowing people to come to the solutions themselves. Again, it's not this global, objectified issue that's insolvable. It's about each child, giving them the opportunity to prosper. You put the resources into that child, you educate, you train, and you work with the child and their families, and the snowball effect will pay for itself. It sounds complicated, it sounds complex, but it's the only sustainable solution. Making it conditional that the community has to help us put the plans into action. Each stage of implementation requires the community to be involved. Each of these children, each of these families, their children will be better because of it, and they'll have less children, they'll be more productive, they'll have good jobs, and goodness knows what the next generation will have, but it won't be a life of poverty. The joy of seeing these kids who have been helped is enormous.
Tell me about your work with the Cambodian Children's Fund.
Yes, I'm fallen in love with Cambodia. I've visited many orphanages while being in Asia, and Cambodia is a special place. And what Scott Neeson is doing is absolutely miraculous. I mean, you just can't imagine being. I've been there, I've toured many times. He is truly an angel in making a difference. And it's not only a difference for now, it's for generations to come.
How do we define homelessness today? Because it covers a very broad range, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. There are varying degrees of homelessness. People that live on the streets, people who get shuttled from one distant relative to another, people who might have a roof over their head but don't know where the next meal is coming from. I mean, quite frankly, domestic violence causes homelessness.
You attended the World Economic Forum in Davos this year. What did you take away from that conference?
Well, attending the World Economic Forum at Davos has made me even more aware of actions being taken around the world to address significant global issues. Very, very smart people on panels, having open discussions, brainstorming, giving their ideas on what can be done to basically solve an economic tsunami.
From a philanthropic standpoint, what were the key issues?
I think the forefront on everyone's mind was poverty. There were a lot of discussions, a lot of brainstorming about poverty, homelessness, unemployment.
Well, I think that one of the things that a society should be judged on is how well we treat all of our people. And that means that we need to pay attention to the problems that people face, particularly when they're right in front of us, when there's something that we see every day. And what that means is that when there are people who are homeless or people who are suffering, we need to find ways to make them productive and happy citizens of our society. This is a difficult thing to do, but it's not as difficult as avoiding it and ignoring it. Because instead of an opportunity to help others, we end up with people who are perceived to be problems and that have to be dealt with. So it's much better to start early and to recognize the problems and deal with them appropriately and restore people to being productive citizens.
I mean, I think one man's condition is going to become every man's condition. I think one family is going to become every family. And I think the need to contribute and to get together and to fight is not just a need for helping out your family member, but it's also helping yourself.
What is the core root of poverty, do you think?
I think it all boils down to education. I think that's what we all need to focus on around the world, is educating people. Because, you know, it's one thing, and as Scott Neeson says, I love his quote of, people need a hand up, not a handout.
What comes to mind for you personally when you think of homelessness?
3 things come to mind. Hope, because people need hope. They need to know that there is a way out. They need to know that there are solutions. They need to know that someone cares about them. Second, skills. They need skills. They need to learn a skill that other people can use. And third, I would say opportunity. They need an opportunity to utilize those skills.
What can people do to help?
Well, providing hot meals and showers and a place to sleep is a triage. It stops the bleeding. Obviously, writing checks are always helpful, but, and I don't want to minimize that importance, but it doesn't cure the problem. More and more shelters are focusing on outcomes that go beyond basic needs.
These are enormous issues to tackle. Is there one single answer?
I don't think there's one single answer. I do think that if we just take one at a time and make a difference on an individual basis, it's magic. One of my favorite quotes is by Nelson Mandela when he says, you know, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And I mean, that says it all.
I come from a fortunate background. I've been blessed in my life. I've got a great family that cares about me, and I've never really had to struggle for, you know, food and money and those kinds of things. But I grew up around a lot of people that did. The majority of people that I grew up with and loving and caring about in my life have seen poverty, and a lot of them are still in it. And, you know, they look at the situation, they're like, you know, what can I really do to help this? Poverty is such a huge world issue that affects so many people. What can I do as one person to help it? And they have a lack of knowledge on the issue, so how can you expect them to come up with a solution for it? So to me, my solutions to overcoming poverty is A, education. Educate the people, let's you know, inform, let's spread the word, let's let people know what's really happening in these streets. And I'm not talking about, you know, donate to a cause when a natural disaster goes down or a bomb blows up. I'm talking about the everyday things. So we have to inform people on that. And we have to learn how to tolerate one another so we can even bear to work alongside one another. You know what I'm saying? So let's get this together and let's learn how to stop poverty.
There's events in my life that would have grouped me absolutely in the statistic of being murdered, being incarcerated, being addicted in drugs, committing suicide. But I was bigger than the sum. I was bigger than that incident. I knew I was bigger than that condition. And I knew I was bigger than what was against me. And I did it with humility. But I did it with a passion. I did it with aggression. I did it with consistency. And, you know, I prevailed. What I would tell people who want to get involved, want to be engaged in making the world better and combating the diseases, the ignorance, and the problems that are affecting this world is by starting in your own neighborhood. One step is a great step towards the progress of healing.
Despite the staggering numbers in need in both the U.S. and abroad, many people have been able to overcome the conditions of poverty and homelessness. there have been many politicians, entertainers, businessmen, and athletes that have been able to pull themselves out of the binds and the conditioning and achieve many great feats.
My life is a page in the chapter of the book of life. And if we can turn each page, each person around or to where this should be in the greatest form, we've done something. That's what this is about.
Through education and the efforts of mankind, the numbers of those in need can be greatly decreased worldwide.
Come quickly, please spread your love today, and love, come quickly, yeah. Lord, come quickly. My Lord, my Lord, my Lord. We heard it before you said, come follow me into everlasting